Hi, everyone. I hope you're well. Well, I finished a book the other day, and this is a brand new book. Yes, every now and then I actually buy a brand new book. And the reason I wanted to buy this brand new book was really twofold, two reasons. One was I wanted to support a local brand new bookshop called Bookmarked in downtown Westchester. And they sell only new books. Cute little store, sort of like a two-story in like a row house building. Very nice. And I wanted to support them. So instead of going to Barnes & Noble to get this book or ordering it online, I thought this is a perfect opportunity to just walk over there and buy a book. And the other reason why I got the book was because the author is an author I've read before. His name is Nicholas Carr. He's most famous, I think, for his book, The Shallows, which is about what digital technology, what the internet is doing to us, doing to our brains and stuff. And I've taught a chapter or two from that book previously, so Nicholas Carr was on my radar, and I noticed he had a new book coming out, and this is it. It's called Superbloom: How Technologies of Connection Tear Us Apart. So when I saw that was coming out, I think it was released in January, I thought, I'm going to get this. And right around that same time, turn of the new year, I noticed that Nicholas Carr started a Substack. So if you want to check out his writing, and I think he does some excerpts from the book, and he talks about themes that are covered in the book, go check out his Substack. I'll leave a link in the show description. And this book, first of all, just the quality of this is published by W.W. Norton, by the way, good reputable publisher. Hardcover. I don't buy new books that often, and the reason why is they're so damn expensive. This was like $29 hardcover, and you'd be amazed at like how, first of all, it's not that long of a book. It's including the notes, it's only like 260 pages. The text is maybe 230 something, and the quality of the paper is like really pretty cheap. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's readable. It's, soft, easy to turn, but you don't get a whole lot for your $29 these days, but so be it. But anyway, I did my part to support book culture, and I bought from an independent bookshop, which I felt good about. And let me tell you about this book. I'll read you the jacket copy we'll start off with, and then I'll just make a few other comments. Think of this as a kind of a off-the-cuff review of the book, a first impressions type of review. So it comes from the author of The Shallows, a bracing exploration of how social media has warped our sense of self and society. From the telegraph and telephone in the 1800s to the internet and social media in our own day, the public has welcomed new communication systems. Whenever people gain more power to share information, the assumption goes, society prospers. Superbloom tells a startlingly different story. As communication becomes more mechanized and efficient, it breeds confusion more than understanding, strife more than harmony. Media technologies all too often bring out the worst in us. I have to say that, he's preaching to the choir here. There's nothing about Nicholas Carr's work that I really disagree with. I found that to be true of The Shallows, and it continues to be true for this book. Here's a little bit about Nicholas Carr for you. A celebrated commentator on the human consequences of technology, Nicholas Carr reorients the conversation around modern communication, challenging some of our most cherished beliefs about self-expression, free speech, and media democratization. He reveals how messaging apps strip nuance from conversation, how digital crowding erodes empathy and triggers aggression, how online political debates narrow our minds and distort our perceptions, and how advances in AI are further blurring the already hazy line between fantasy and reality, even as Carr shows how tech companies and their tools of connection have failed us. He forces us to confront inconvenient truths about our own nature. The human psyche, it turns out, is profoundly ill-suited to the superbloom of information that technology has unleashed. With rich psychological insights and vivid examples drawn from history and science, Superbloom provides both a panoramic view of how media shapes society and an intimate examination of the fate of the self in a time of radical dislocation. It may be too late to change the system, Carr counsels, but it's not too late to change ourselves. And here's a picture of the author. And so that's a good overview. The book starts with a descriptive anecdote, and he talks about the phenomenon of a superbloom of poppy flowers in the Termacol Mountains of California, about 70-some miles from Los Angeles. This was a rare photo opportunity, and social media influencers flocked there. This was several years ago this happened. And it caused traffic jams. All these people were traipsing around and trampling the flowers. And the viral hashtag celebration, which took off, turned into a viral backlash of hate and shame. People saying like, "You're trampling the flowers. You're an asshole. Like, why are you doing this? Get out of nature." That kind of thing. And for Carr, this incident, this anecdote, is like a microcosmic dramatization of the democratization of media, with all the fools playing their prescribed roles. You've got the influencers. You have they're brash. They're sort of barge in. I remember there was a story, I think last fall, about some really scenic little viewpoint in Vermont, which is a magnet for influencers. And the local authorities there had to close the road just to keep these people out. So this isn't the only time or place that this has happened. But you've got the brash influencers, the trolls, you have the virtue vigilantes, the police, the virtue police, as it were, and everyone else who's sort of following these hashtags, the phone heads who are devoid of common sense, and they also kind of flock to these places. And it's a democratic medium, though, because like everyone can participate in it, right? But it's not necessarily a good thing. Superbloom is a metaphor of unbounded messages and human transceivers on the communication network. So transceivers means like you can send and receive messages across the network, right? Let's say you're on Instagram, you can receive those photo messages and you can send them out, and you can basically broadcast them to whoever follows you or follows that hashtag. And this phenomenon once promised us that it would, quote, broaden our minds, enlarge our sympathies, and make the world a nicer place. More communication would mean more understanding. It hasn't turned out that way. And those of you who are old enough to remember the rise of the internet let's just take from the 90s as a point of reference, there was a lot of heady optimism about all the democratic possibilities of this. the digital convergence on the internet of all media, and the fact that you could participate in that it was two-way. People just were very positive about his promise. Well, it didn't turn out the way it was promised. And that's what this book is essentially trying to chart. So the book explores the unforeseen consequences and the social pathologies of this democratized medium. And it's separated into, I think it's 3 parts with multiple chapters in each. So part 1 is called Collapse. Part 2 is the tragedy of communication. And part 3, everything is mediated. What he basically does in part 1, if my memory serves me, is it's mainly a historical overview, a survey of the history of where do we get the concept of social media from, also the history of communication technology. So there's a lot in here about, for instance, the telegraph, but he also talks about writing, but in more recent history, like 19th century history of the telegraph and the telephone and the radio, the wireless radio, and film and television, and the impact on publishing, and then the rise of computers and the internet. So there's a lot about that, but it's also about how society, and there's mostly focused on American society here, attempted to use the laws and regulations to sort of promote these technologies, but also to curb them in some instances. And he does a pretty good job of laying out some of the disputes, the pros and the cons of free speech versus curbing speech, and what constitutes a situation where a company should be held responsible for the messages that are sent over their network. And he even talks about this was an issue with the telegraph and just the mail, the U.S. mail, the common carrier type of idea. But this became a big subject of debate when the internet stepped into the fray. But he talks about, the emergence of the FCC, and, there's a lot of policy that's discussed in here, and things that are, kind of back and forth, and, free enterprise and free expression, or being, the idea that these technologies would promote all that. But the fact of the matter is, in lots of cases, they don't necessarily do that. He also gets into, in chapter 3, a chapter called The Feed, he isolates a moment in the history of Facebook where the news feed was launched. Were you there when that happened? Were you on Facebook when the news feed was launched? I remember I didn't like it at all when it popped up, and I resented it, and I still do to this day. And he talks about how these companies, why they design those things, and some of the utopian pronouncements they made about why that would be a good thing to bring people together and so forth, but how in practice it really didn't work out that way, and how it's really now an algorithm that's determining what it wants you to see. And those of us who watch a lot of YouTube, the all-knowing, all-seeing algorithm that no one really understands, more inscrutable than God, I think. Well, that's kind of what he's driving at here. He sees that as an important sort of pivot point in the history of the internet. And then part 2, the tragedy of communication, is where he gets into okay, it had all this promise, but now let's look at what really happened. And part 3, it sort of gets worse. Everything is mediated. So he has chapters on the dislocated eye, machines who speak, World Without World. It gets into like AI and like what this is doing to our sense of self and so forth. And then he finishes with an anecdote about Samuel Johnson and Boswell, his biographer. It's called Dr. Johnson's Rock, which I won't give away, but it's a nice way to cap off the book. Anyway, it's a lot of food for thought. Here are some just general impressions about the book itself. I think I like The Shallows better just as a book. This felt a little bit cobbled together. Sometimes it's very well researched. It's got good footnotes. And one of the strengths of the book is some of the research that he digests for us. And these are passages in the book that I want to come back to. And I might even make some further videos about some of these because it clearly falls into the big ideas aspect of our channel, like food for thought, things to think about what technology is doing to us. And I appreciated that. Like he's good at that. It's written with a kind of in the style of like a long form journalist. But what I found a little bit lacking was I wish there was more of a continuous thread through the book. Sometimes I felt a little bit jolted moving from chapter to chapter, and I have to get reoriented a little bit. It was a little slapdash that way. And what else? I think his style, it felt sometimes a bit rushed, a little bit like I was hoping for more flair. I was hoping for more of a voice in there. I'm being probably excessively critical of it because but on the whole I like it and I recommend the book. I'm trying to give a fair criticism of things that didn't hit me as well as other aspects of it. And on the whole, I think, this is a topic that I generally have interest in, and a lot of the people that he name checks in the book, he name checks a lot of people, but there are a lot of familiar names here, or at least names that I'm familiar with having read about before. So people like Sherry Turkle, like a terrific nonfiction author who studied media and society for decades. She's talked about in here. Marshall McLuhan, of course, Harold Innis, Lyotard, a French intellectual, and his notion of hyperreality that gets some coverage later in the book, and many others. Neil Postman would be another one. These people are given their due credit. And he talks a lot about them. So he's covering ground that's pretty familiar to me, and covering it adequately. How much new he adds to the conversation? I think the new spin he's trying to put on here is more on the really trying to chart how this all turned sour and like why it turned sour. And a lot of the general impression I got from the book was just one of depression, to be honest. And this is what happens when I read books like this. Like I'm on board, you're preaching to the choir, to the converted. I'm hearing kind of what I expect to hear, and it makes me really sad. But sometimes the truth hurts. And it is the way it is. What makes it hurt is I don't think there's any way out at this point. Like we are really going down the toilet, as some people like to say. There are a couple. I wouldn't say he tries to end the book on a positive note, but he tries to end it more on like maybe a constructive note, sort of like, well, what can we do as we're being like assaulted by all this AI and algorithms and what it's doing to our sense of self, what it's doing, how it sort of makes us hate each other and all the rest of it. One quote solution, which isn't really a solution, is to add more friction into the system so we could use we could put curbs in, like maybe how often you post, or like maybe something that you would hit as a reply, some kind of knee-jerk reply to someone, like wouldn't go out right away. Like there would be a delay. So if you change your mind, you could take that back. And other kind of like throwing sand into the gears, like that kind of thing, but doing it in like a legal way, regulatory way. That might have some small impact, but like let's face it, that's not going to work. And he all but admits that. And the other thing he talks about is just, in a way, like, I guess, sort of shutting down yourself and taking yourself out of the network to a degree. And of course, that's something that I try to do in my life, but you can't completely divorce yourself from the internet unless you want to become a pariah or be completely disappeared from our culture. So I think what you have to do is be really smart about how you use these tools, these apps, these networks, these platforms, and be very selective about it. Which, just speaking personally, is one reason why I have really dialed back almost all of my social media use. And I'm very selective about where I put content. So I made a decision to go with YouTube as sort of my main avenue of self-expression online. We do distribute our music through SoundCloud, and it's kind of spreads to all those streaming services, and that's nice. I have a Substack, I have a Medium.com page or site, and that's it. I really don't participate in Instagram. I have on Instagram, but I don't do anything with it. I hardly ever post to Facebook anymore. I don't check these sites that often. I deleted my Twitter account like years ago, even before Elon Musk got into the show. I was gone from there. Never a Twitter person. So like less is more in my world when it comes to these things. And so to a degree, like I think that can at least preserve some of your sanity and maybe make you hate people less. But at the same time, it's kind of a lonely track. So because everyone else is online. Here's another thing I'll talk about that I remember. If I could find a passage, I should have earmarked it. I could quote it. But there was this sense I got. It was something really where I thought I could see this in my own neighborhood. This sense that like now that we've gone on, like everyone's online and they're all doing all their sharing and commenting and all the stuff that they do on these social media apps. Life has, like real world life, like concrete, on the sidewalk, on the street, social interactions has just tanked. Like there's just and I can confirm this in my own life. Well, not in my personal life. I've always been an introvert and a homebody, but I don't go out as much as I used to. But I'm old now, so that goes to the territory. I'm talking about young people. I live in a college town, and even on our block, we don't live in the rowdy college neighborhood, but even on our block, there are some apartments with college students, usually upperclassmen. And we moved into this house we bought 2001. And those early years, like before Facebook, before the news feed, it was a more boisterous, more traffic, a little rowdier, a little gnarlier, but a lot more alive. And it was always a safe neighborhood. It wasn't really a problem. But every now and then, like someone would have a party or you'd hear something out on the street or, there would just be life. There would be life out there. And it wasn't always a bad thing. These days, especially since COVID, but this started before COVID, now my sense is everyone is cocooned in their room and they are socializing online. I'm talking young people, college students or 20-somethings. It's different. It's different. I can see and hear it, or it's the lack of seeing and hearing it that I notice. I just don't, where is the lifeblood? Like that is what often disturbs me. And this book has made me think those thoughts, and it in some degree validated those perceptions that I've had in my own local neighborhood. I'd be curious to hear what people think about that. If you notice the same phenomenon in your neighborhoods, where it just seems like people don't go out as much anymore. They're not as visibly social with one another. And with young people, like they're just engaging in completely different ways. All their socializing is mediated now, or 95% of it. And I don't think that's a good development. I really don't. But there's always a good side to things, which he does point out some of the time. But the downside risk is really what he's mainly focused on here. So that's just a quick peek at Superbloom by Nicholas Carr. And again, check out his Substack if you're not certain you would like this book. Check other reviews of it. Maybe your library has a copy. I wish I had just read this from the library, but I'm glad I got to support my local independent bookshop and actually buy a brand new copy. But we'll see. I don't know how long I'll keep this. I might come back and dip into this book again, and we'll just do these little very short food for thought type videos. Let me know if you're interested in hearing me read some passages from the book like that, and we can get some commentary going. Anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate you sticking with me, and I hope to be back again with a new video very soon. Be well. Peace out.